2002, a fight between the Mongols biker gang and the Hells Angels biker gang led to the deaths of 3 people inside the Harrah's Casino.
April 27, 2002, Harrah's Casino in Laughlin, Nevada. Hundreds of bikers gathered for the annual River Run Rally, filling the casino floor with tension. The Hells Angels and Mongols had been rivals for years, but that night they were about to face off in a way that would change biker history forever. Here are 5 times bikers messed with the wrong gangs.
This was Maurice Mame Boucher at a court appearance for his son. Boucher was the head of an elite chapter of the Hells Angels. Everyone knew Mame Boucher was a killer, and he knew everyone knew.
July 13, 1994. 3 masked men enter a motorcycle shop on Henri Bourassa Boulevard in East Montreal. They call out Pierre Daoust's name twice, making sure they have the right target. 16 bullets later, Daoust, a member of a Hells Angels support club called the Death Riders, becomes the first casualty of what would be called the Quebec Biker War. The Quebec Biker War stands as one of the most violent criminal conflicts in Canadian history. Spanning from 1994 to 2002, this brutal battle between the Hells Angels and the Rock Machine left over 160 dead, hundreds wounded, and Quebec's underworld forever changed. The war began when the Hells Angels, already dominant in Quebec's drug trade, moved to monopolize all street-level sales. Their message was clear: deal with us or else. The Rock Machine, backed by a loose coalition of independent dealers known as the Alliance, refused to submit. The result was an escalation that would stun even hardened criminals. July 13, 1994, the conflict's opening shot was fired. 3 masked men entered Pierre Daoust's custom cycle shop in Rivière des Prairies. After confirming his identity, they pumped 16 bullets into Daoust, a member of the Death Riders, a Hells Angels support club. This marked the war's official beginning and set the stage for years of violence.
Quebec's biker war raged for 8 years. More than 160 people were killed, and it made the man at the middle of it infamous.
The Hells Angels, led by Maurice Mame Boucher, quickly demonstrated their ruthlessness. Boucher, notorious for his iron-fisted leadership, pushed for total control. Under his command, the Angels created puppet clubs to increase their manpower and further insulate themselves from direct criminal liability. The Rock Machine, led by the Cazzetta brothers, initially held their ground. Salvatore Cazzetta's close ties to the Montreal Mafia gave the Rock Machine breathing room. But in 1994, Salvatore's arrest for attempting to smuggle 200 kilos of cocaine into Canada removed a crucial pillar of resistance. With Salvatore imprisoned, Boucher moved aggressively to consolidate power. Violence escalated rapidly. The Alliance retaliated with bombings, shootings, and arson attacks. Both sides suffered heavy losses, but the Hells Angels, with superior resources and organization, maintained the upper hand. The conflict's brutality shocked even seasoned criminals. Over 80 bombings rocked Quebec, while 130 arson attacks targeted bars, businesses, and clubhouses. Innocent bystanders were caught in the crossfire. The most tragic example came on August 9, 1995, when 11-year-old Daniel Desrochers was killed by shrapnel from a car bomb intended for a drug dealer. His death galvanized public opinion and forced authorities to take the situation seriously. Police response was hampered by jurisdictional conflicts and political infighting between provincial and federal authorities. Joint task forces like Operation Carcajou struggled to make headway against the entrenched criminal organizations. Boucher escalated the conflict by targeting the justice system itself. He ordered the murders of prison guards Diane Levine and Pierre Rondeau, and attempted to kill a third, Robert Corriveau. These brazen attacks on state officials marked a dangerous new phase in the war.
Boucher was found guilty the second time around. He would spend the rest of his days in prison, but still plugged into organized crime, in fact, still ordering murders. In 2018, he had another 10 years tacked on to a life sentence.
The Rock Machine, facing annihilation, sought international support. In 2000, they became probationary members of the Bandidos, the world's second-largest outlaw biker club. This brought new resources but also internal conflict, as many members defected to the Hells Angels rather than accept subordinate positions in the Bandidos hierarchy. The Hells Angels cleverly used the Bandidos merger to their advantage. They offered truce terms to probationary Bandidos, encouraging further defections. Meanwhile, police pressure intensified. Operation Springtime in March 2001 resulted in the arrest of Boucher and 41 associates, creating a temporary power vacuum. With Boucher removed from the streets, the Bandidos attempted to seize control of Montreal's drug trade. However, Operation Amigo in June 2002 decimated their ranks, arresting 62 members and effectively ending the war. The Bandidos conceded Quebec to the Hells Angels in 2003, marking the Angels' total victory.
Daniel Desrochers, the 11-year-old boy playing in a park, killed when a Jeep nearby was blown up. And Yves Albert, the father of two, gunned down gassing up his car. He was shot 9 times because he was mistaken for a biker.
And the Quebec Biker War's toll was staggering. 162 dead, including innocent bystanders, over 300 wounded, 100+ arrested, and millions in property damage. The war's brutality surpassed even the infamous New York Mafia conflicts of the 1970s and 80s. Boucher's conviction for orchestrating the murder of prison guards was a turning point. He received a life sentence without parole for 25 years, spending his final decades in prison before dying of cancer in 2022. While his reign ended, the pain and trauma he caused persisted. The Quebec Biker War fundamentally reshaped organized crime in Canada. The Hells Angels emerged as the dominant force, controlling Quebec's drug trade and expanding their influence nationwide. The conflict's legacy continues to shape law enforcement strategies and organized crime in Canada to this day. This brutal 8-year war stands as a grim testament to what happens when powerful criminal organizations collide and the devastating consequences that ripple far beyond the underworld. The Quebec Biker War revealed how unchecked rivalries can grow into full-scale criminal conflicts with deadly consequences. But this wasn't the only time bikers underestimated their opponents. In the next case, a rivalry ignited not over territory, but over something as simple as a coffee shop.
War. And it all started when the Vagos tried to muscle in on a Hells Angels hangout, that being a Starbucks in downtown Santa Cruz in California.
The Vagos and Hells Angels rivalry stands as one of the most notorious and violent feuds in outlaw motorcycle club history. While their animosity stretches back decades, January 27, 2010, was when the real escalation began at a Starbucks in Santa Cruz, California, when the Vagos tried to take over what had long been a Hells Angels hangout. That bold move ignited a series of explosive confrontations that would leave both clubs scarred and the biker world forever changed. The Starbucks brawl was brutal. One biker walked away with a literal boot print stamped on his forehead, visible proof of just how personal this rivalry had become. But that was only the beginning. The violence quickly jumped state lines. In Arizona, a gunfight outside a casino left 5 people wounded. But it was the deadly Sparks, Nevada, casino shooting in September 2011 that truly lit the fuse for all-out war. That night, inside John Esquaga's Nugget Casino, Hells Angels San Jose chapter president Jeffrey Jethro Pettigrew was shot 4 times in the back, allegedly by Vagos member Ernesto Gonzalez. Surveillance footage would later reveal the chaos, gunfire erupting, patrons diving for cover beneath blackjack tables, and the casino floor transformed into a war zone. The violence didn't end there. The very next morning, a Vagos member was shot in the stomach just blocks from the casino, and Pettigrew's funeral would become another flashpoint, resulting in even more bloodshed. George Christie, former Hells Angels leader, puts it bluntly, "Really what it boils down to is territory and egos." He points to the 2011 Sparks shooting as the moment that lit the fuse, turning an already tense relationship into an all-out cycle of violence. In the years that followed, violence between the two clubs would flare up again and again. Most recently, in May 2022, their rivalry exploded on a busy Nevada freeway, putting innocent lives at risk and shutting down a major highway for hours.
It played out like an action movie. Outlaw bikers waiting to pounce, standing on their bikes, kicking and shooting at each other as police described.
That Memorial Day weekend, a group of Vagos were returning from a veteran cemetery ride when Hells Angels members ambushed them on US 95. The Hells Angels waited on the side of the freeway, then pulled alongside the Vagos, kicking at their bikes in an attempt to knock them over. Suddenly, one Hells Angel stood up on his motorcycle and opened fire. 7 people were injured, 6 of them Vagos members. 2 were hospitalized in critical condition, 3 Hells Angels. Richard DeVries, Stephen Allo, and Russell Smith were arrested and charged with multiple felonies, including attempted murder. This pattern of violence isn't random, it follows a clear and deadly logic. George Christie explains, "It's probably a chance encounter. There's an ongoing conflict, and somebody sees a member of the other club and somebody reacts or possibly overreacts. The next thing you know, you've got a conflict escalating right in the middle of traffic." What started over a coffee shop now plays out in public spaces across the Southwest, putting innocent bystanders at risk and forcing law enforcement to respond with overwhelming force. As one local witness put it, "We've never seen anything like this here. It was absolutely insane. Bumper to bumper. Parking lot for a good mile, 2 miles of the radius of this. Seeing something like that happen not 3 miles from my house was really crazy." George Christie, reflecting on the endless cycle of violence, offers a sobering conclusion.
This is not productive, and if they're really involved in the sport of riding motorcycles and brotherhood and whatnot, they need to put this stuff behind them, and it's not good for anybody. And
Vagos versus Hells Angels rivalry is more than just a feud. It's a cautionary tale about how the pursuit of pride, territory, and revenge can consume even the most hardened outlaws. And as long as this cycle continues, every encounter between these two clubs holds the potential to explode into violence, threatening not just themselves, but anyone unlucky enough to be caught in the crossfire. What started with a coffee shop confrontation turned into a years-long cycle of retaliation and highway ambushes. But the next case proved that sometimes the danger can even be close to home, where bikers learned that power doesn't always protect them.
A sweeping police crackdown on organized crime in Quebec has led to more than 30 arrests in the last week, and more are expected.
The story begins with a phone call from a concerned neighbor in Quebec City on February 21st, 2024. That night, police would discover a secluded rural home transformed into a torture chamber. This would ignite a brutal chapter in the ongoing war between two of Quebec's most dangerous criminal organizations, the Blood Family Mafia and the Hells Angels. For decades, the Hells Angels had maintained a tight grip on the distribution network. Independent dealers were allowed to operate, but only if they paid a mandatory 10% tax on all drug sales in Hells-controlled territory. Most street gangs reluctantly accepted this arrangement until the Blood Family Mafia decided they'd had enough. The BFM, led by the young and ruthless Dave Pick Turmel, began as just another street gang in Quebec. Their style was modeled after the American Bloods, but their tactics quickly evolved into something far more violent. By early 2023, Turmel's crew stopped paying the Hells Angels drug tax. Instead, they launched a series of attacks against anyone affiliated with the biker gang. Their violence quickly escalated to unprecedented levels. In February 2024, BFM members kidnapped 3 men with known Hells Angels connections. The victims were taken to that isolated house in Saint-Malachie. Police would later describe the scene as a night of horror. The men were beaten, waterboarded 3 times, and one had his feet burned. Miraculously, all 3 survived, but the message was clear. The BFM wasn't backing down. Just days later, the violence continued on the streets of Montreal. This time, another Hells Angels affiliate was kidnapped, tortured, and mutilated before being dumped on the street. These attacks shocked even veteran organized crime investigators.
The other incident was also the kidnapping of a man with links to the Hells. He was dropped off on the streets of Montreal after being tortured and mutilated.
The Hells Angels, known for their calculated brutality, found themselves caught off guard by the BFM's new tactics. Instead of immediate retaliation, they turned to an unexpected strategy. According to sources, the Hells used back channels to pressure police into taking action. They warned authorities that if the violence continued unchecked, the situation could spiral out of control. Police responded with a massive crackdown. Over 30 arrests were made in a single week, targeting key members of the BFM organization. But their leader, Dave Turmel, remained at large, believed to be hiding in Europe. Police quickly expanded their investigation internationally, working with foreign authorities to track him down. Despite these efforts, Turmel continued to direct operations from abroad. The BFM's campaign of terror didn't stop with the Hells Angels. They began targeting other independent dealers who still paid the biker gang's tax. Those who refused to switch allegiance faced brutal consequences. Some were kidnapped, tortured, and forced to watch videos of other victims being mutilated. The message was clear: join the BFM or suffer the same fate. What set the BFM apart was its willingness to use extreme violence as a business tactic. They borrowed methods from Central American gangs, including torture and mutilation, to intimidate rivals. Criminologists noted that this level of brutality was unprecedented in Quebec's organized crime history. The Hells Angels, despite their reputation, found themselves outmatched by the BFM's new generation of violence. Their leadership, now aging and cautious after decades of bloody turf wars, struggled to adapt. Instead of direct confrontation, they tried to negotiate a truce, something almost unheard of in biker gang culture. But the BFM refused to back down. Their attacks continued, forcing the Hells Angels to take more aggressive action. They formed baseball teams, groups of enforcers who traveled across Quebec, beating up independent dealers who considered switching sides. The underworld was now divided between those loyal to the old order and those embracing the BFM's new regime. As the war raged on, police maintained their official position of neutrality. They insisted their actions were driven by law enforcement priorities, not gang rivalries. Still, the timing of their crackdown suggested otherwise. The conflict reached a turning point when the BFM released videos online showing them torturing Hells Angels members. This unprecedented move shocked the criminal underworld and forced the Hells Angels to respond more aggressively. Suddenly, the balance of power in Quebec's drug trade was up for grabs. In the end, over 30 arrests crippled the BFM's operations but failed to stop the violence entirely. Their leader, Dave Turmel, remained at large, directing operations from exile. The Hells Angels, battered but not broken, fought to regain control of their territory. The war between the Blood family mafia and the Hells Angels marked a new chapter in organized crime. It showed that even the most established criminal organizations could be challenged by younger, more ruthless rivals. And it proved that in the world of organized crime, there's always someone willing to break the rules, no matter how high the cost. The message was clear: in the world of organized crime, even the most powerful can become targets when they least expect it. But sometimes the battles doesn't happen in hidden torture houses or remote locations. They can break out in public, right in front of everyday people. And our next case proves that.
The fight was captured on this drone footage. It shows what witnesses say was a brawl between rival biker gangs, the Hells Angels, and the Outlaws.
August 20th, 2017, Ottawa, Illinois. 7:30 p.m. The evening shattered as two of America's most notorious biker gangs clashed in broad daylight. This wasn't just another bar fight. This was the Hells Angels versus the Outlaws, in a street brawl that would make headlines across the country. It started with tension simmering outside JJ's pub. Witnesses say the air was thick with anticipation as 50 to 75 bikers, divided between red and black patches, gathered on the street. No one knew what would spark the violence, but everyone sensed it was coming. The first punch came quickly. A man in a suit, later identified as a high-ranking Outlaws member, approached a Hells Angel backed against a car. Within seconds, fists flew, and the entire street erupted into chaos. Weapons appeared: hammers, brass knuckles, knives, and even handguns. The fight was on.
It was a brawl. I couldn't really keep my eyes on everybody, but And no gunshots or anything like that, but I heard there was a hammer used.
Nicholas Halfman, a bartender at a nearby pub, watched in horror as the scene unfolded. The violence spilled into the street, drawing a crowd of shocked onlookers. But police were already nearby, anticipating trouble. They moved in fast, shouting commands and deploying mace to break up the fight.
I heard the officers yelling, "Get down on the ground, get down on the ground," and I just seen them. I'm pretty sure they were macing them, or pointing a weapon or mace at them.
The chaos lasted less than a minute, but the damage was done. People lay bleeding in the street, some with serious injuries. One man had a shirt pressed to his head, blood leaking through his fingers. Another staggered, dazed, and covered in pepper spray. Police quickly secured the scene, detaining dozens of bikers and searching the area for weapons. The haul was impressive. 2 handguns, multiple knives, brass knuckles, and improvised weapons like broken bottles. It was clear this had been more than a spontaneous bar fight. Ottawa Police Chief Brent Rolson later commented, "We were prepared for this. We knew there was tension between these groups, and we had officers in the area. Their quick response prevented this from turning deadly." 4 men were arrested at the scene. Craig Varner received a citation for expired registration, but the other 3 faced far more serious charges. Christopher Tondini, 39, was charged with unlawfully altering his registration. Robert Toman, 53, faced complaints of mob action and possession of brass knuckles, a broken glass bottle, and bringing a gun into a bar. But the most serious charges were reserved for Eric Cronin, 38. He was arrested for mob action and aggravated assault upon a peace officer for allegedly attacking a police officer with a knife during the chaos. The aftermath was captured by drone footage that quickly went viral. The aerial view showed the scale of the conflict: dozens of motorcycles, scattered bodies, and a heavy police presence. It was a stark reminder of the violence that simmers beneath the surface of America's biker culture. As the dust settled, investigators began piecing together what led to this explosive confrontation. Both the Hells Angels and Outlaws have long histories of violence, but this incident marked a new escalation in their rivalry. It was clear that this fight wasn't random. It was a calculated show of force between 2 powerful criminal organizations. The Ottawa Brawl was a wake-up call for law enforcement across the country. It showed that even in small towns, the violence between rival biker gangs can erupt at any moment. And while this incident ended without fatalities, the potential for deadly violence remains ever present whenever these 2 groups cross paths. This wasn't just a fight over territory or pride. It was a declaration of war between 2 of the most dangerous biker gangs in America. And as both sides regroup and rearm, everyone knows this is just the beginning of a much larger conflict. The streets of Ottawa may have returned to normal, but the battle between the Hells Angels and the Outlaws is far from over. And as history has shown, when these 2 gangs go to war, the entire country takes notice. That street brawl proved that even small towns can become battlegrounds when rival biker gangs collide. Police managed to stop it before it turned deadly, but in one infamous case, nothing stopped the violence. It all unfolded in a crowded casino, with cameras recording every moment.
Inside, over 100 members of their sworn enemies, the Mongols.
April 27, 2002, Harrah's Casino in Laughlin, Nevada. The annual River Run Biker Rally was in full swing, drawing nearly 80,000 visitors. But tension simmered between 2 of America's most notorious motorcycle gangs, the Hells Angels and the Mongols. Security cameras captured every moment as the night took a deadly turn. Members of both gangs entered the casino, visibly armed and prepared for confrontation. Police officer Craig Olson later explained, "The Mongols wanted to challenge the Hells Angels for their position in the biker world, outlaw motorcycle gang world." Both gangs had been locked in an 18-month turf war, and tonight, it was about to explode. The confrontation began with a tense standoff. 2 groups locked eyes across the casino floor. Suddenly, a Hells Angel named Raymond Folks delivered a kick to a rival Mongol, igniting the powder keg.
It starts when Angel Raymond Folks kicks a rival Mongol in the chest.
Pandemonium erupted as fists, knives, and then guns came out. The casino floor devolved into chaos with innocent bystanders diving for cover.
The gunshots started. Many shots were fired.
Security footage shows Mongols and Hell's Angels engaged in brutal hand-to-hand combat, knives flashing in the harsh casino lighting. The violence quickly escalated as gunfire rang out, transforming the casino into a war zone.
Casino patrons dive for cover.
Casualties mounted rapidly. 2 Hell's Angels and 1 Mongol lay dead, but Officer Olson later suggested the true toll might be higher.
Later, there were reports that gang members who were able to flee carried out others that had been shot and were injured. I believe the actual injury and death toll is higher than reported,
Olson stated. The violence inside Harrah's casino marked the climax of the biker gang's turf war, but the aftermath would ripple through the outlaw motorcycle world for years to come. The casino floor, once buzzing with excitement, now lay covered in debris, overturned furniture, shattered glass, and evidence of the brutal conflict.
When the dust finally settles, what's left is confusion and bodies.
Police response was immediate but overwhelmed. Officers arriving on scene faced a dangerous situation. 2 officers confronting 150 to 200 armed outlaw motorcycle gang members. The odds were not in their favor. Despite the violence, no tourists or hotel employees were injured. A fortunate outcome given the scale of the melee. But for the biker world, everything had changed. The River Run, once the largest motorcycle rally in the western United States, was forever altered. Attendance dropped, vendors left, and the event's wild reputation faded. In the aftermath, authorities implemented strict security measures. Increased police presence became the new normal, transforming the event from a lawless gathering to a controlled environment.
We went through a period where we had a lot of police presence. You know, everyone, like it's the 15th anniversary of the shooting at Harrah's, and we responded to that by increasing our police presence.
Legal consequences followed swiftly. 14 gang members faced over 70 charges, including murder. The message was clear. Large-scale biker violence would no longer be tolerated. The River Run evolved. Organizers found a balance between fun and safety, creating one of the safest and still most enjoyable motorcycle rallies in the country. But the memory of that night in 2002 remains. The Laughlin River Run riot serves as a stark reminder of what happens when rival biker gangs push too far. The era of public confrontations ended that night, replaced by a new reality of surveillance, security, and consequence. For the Hells Angels and Mongols, the price was steep, lives lost, reputations destroyed, and a legacy of violence that still echoes through the outlaw motorcycle world. The River Run riot stands as one of the most brutal examples of what happens when bikers mess with the wrong gangs. These stories prove that in the biker underworld, one wrong move, one wrong step, or even one wrong location can trigger violence with lasting consequences. Rivalries run deep, pride runs high, and when bikers challenge the wrong gang, history remembers what happens next.